Walking is one of the first things people turn to when they want to feel better after 50. They want more energy, less stiffness, better balance, a healthier heart, a little more control over their weight. And on the surface, it sounds like one of the safest things they can do. That is exactly why so many people never question it. What concerns me is how often I see adults over 50 doing something healthy in a way that quietly creates new problems. Not because walking is bad, it isn't, but because small walking mistakes repeated every day can slowly put stress on the feet, knees, hips, and lower back without making a big announcement at first. And that is usually how the trouble begins. At first it feels minor, a little heel pain in the morning, a knee that feels tight after a walk, a sore lower back later in the day, a strange feeling of imbalance on stairs or uneven ground. Most people brush it off. They tell themselves they are just getting older. They think maybe they slept wrong. Maybe they overdid it yesterday. Maybe their body simply needs more time to loosen up. In my 30 years of practice, I've seen this happen again and again. If you find videos like this helpful, subscribe and leave a like. I share these warnings so you can recognize the signs early before they become harder to ignore. And if you're dealing with something similar or have a question, write it in the comments. The pattern is usually very quiet in the beginning. A person starts walking more because they want to take care of themselves. That part is good. But then the body starts sending small signals. Not loud pain, not some dramatic injury, just little warnings. And because those warnings feel ordinary, they get ignored. Many people assume this is just aging. In practice, it often isn't. Patients like you come to me with this exact issue. They often say the same thing. I thought walking was supposed to help. And in many cases it should. But when the body is moving with poor mechanics, the wrong shoes, poor posture, weak stability, or too much repetition, even a healthy habit can start working against you. This is not rare. It happens more than you think. Just recently, I saw this exact pattern in someone who had made walking part of a daily routine after turning 50. They were proud of staying active, and they should have been. But they were walking with heavy steps, looking down too much, staying stiff through the hips, and using shoes that had already lost their support. They did not think any of it mattered. After all, they were just walking. Nothing intense, nothing extreme. But over time, their feet started hurting. Then one knee, then the lower back. Then they began to feel less steady than before. What they thought was a healthy routine had quietly become a daily source of strain. That is where the danger lies. After 50, the body often becomes less forgiving of repeated stress. The joints may tolerate poor movement less well than they used to. Balance may not recover as quickly. Small weaknesses in the feet, ankles, hips, or core may begin to show up more clearly. And when that happens, a walking mistake that once caused no obvious problem can slowly lead to pain, stiffness, reduced confidence, and in some cases, a greater risk of falling. And that part matters more than most people realize. Because when people stop trusting the way they walk, other things start changing too. They move less. They avoid stairs. They cut back on errands. They stop taking longer walks. Their world gets a little smaller. Not all at once, quietly, step by step. I've seen strong, independent people ignore this for weeks, not because they were careless, because the early signs are easy to miss. That is why this topic matters. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 walking mistakes that quietly harm your health after 50. These are the kinds of mistakes people make without realizing it. We'll look at what people usually feel, what they often think is causing it, what may actually be going wrong underneath, and why these patterns deserve more attention before they turn into bigger problems. The first mistake is one of the most overlooked of them all, because from the outside, it does not look like a mistake at all. It looks normal. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen this one simple habit change the way stress travels through the entire body, from the feet all the way up to the neck and lower back. The first mistake is walking with your head and shoulders too far forward. This is one of the most common patterns I see, and most people do not notice they are doing it. They walk looking slightly down. Their chin drifts forward. Their shoulders round. Their upper back stiffens. And over time, that changes far more than posture. Most people think this only affects the neck, but it often does much more than that. What I've seen in practice is that when the head moves too far forward, the body starts adjusting all the way down. The upper back tightens. The lower back may begin to compensate. The hips may not move as freely. Even the way the feet strike the ground can change. So what looks like a small posture habit can quietly create stress through the entire walking pattern. What makes this dangerous is how normal it feels. People do it every day. They do it while walking outside. They do it on treadmills. They do it while looking at the ground, watching traffic, or thinking about something else. And because it becomes automatic, they stop questioning it. But after 50, poor walking posture is not something I would ignore, because the body is often less forgiving of repeated strain. That forward position can make balance less steady, breathing feel a little tighter, and fatigue show up sooner than it should. I've seen hundreds of cases like this, and many people only realize it matters after the neck, shoulders, or lower back begin complaining every day. The second mistake is taking heavy, pounding steps. This one quietly harms the body more than people think, especially when it is repeated day after day. Some people walk as if they are dropping their weight into each step. They strike hard. They land stiff. There is very little softness in the movement, very little control through the foot and ankle. At first, they may not feel much. Then the body starts sending signals. Heel pain, shin tightness, sore knees, hip irritation, low back pressure later in the day. Most people assume the problem is age, or maybe arthritis, or maybe just bad joints. But sometimes the real issue is not only the joint, it is the force going through it. When the body lands too hard again and again, that force has to travel somewhere. And usually it does not stay in one place. The feet absorb some of it. The knees take some. The hips take some. The spine may take some too. This is exactly how a simple walking habit can become a pattern of cumulative strain. Patients like you come to me with this exact issue, and they often say, "I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I was only walking." That is the trap. Because walking feels safe, people rarely examine how they are walking. Now, the third mistake is one I've seen ignored far too often. And what concerns me about this one is that many people think it is harmless because it starts in the shoes, not the body. The third mistake is walking in worn-out or unsupportive shoes. This is not a small issue. It changes the entire foundation. After 50, the feet often need more support, not less. The arch may not tolerate stress the same way it once did. The cushioning may matter more. Stability may matter more. And if the shoe is broken down, even slightly, the body may start adjusting above it without you realizing it. Most people do not check this carefully. If the shoe still looks decent from the outside, they keep using it. But I've seen this happen again and again. The sole wears unevenly. The support weakens. The foot rolls differently. The ankle becomes less stable. And then the knee or hip begins to complain. That is how these patterns hide. The pain may show up in one place, but the problem may begin somewhere else entirely. Just recently, I saw someone who kept blaming their knee. They thought the knee was the whole story. But when we looked closer, the walking pattern and the shoe support were both working against them. The knee was only where the strain had finally become noticeable. This is exactly the kind of symptom chain that fools people into waiting too long. And this is where many people make the biggest mistake. They wait for the pain to become strong before they take it seriously. But the body does not always start with strong pain. Often it starts with repetition, a little stiffness, a little soreness, a subtle loss of ease, a quieter step becoming a heavier one, a confident walk becoming a more guarded walk. Those are early warnings. And the next mistakes are even more overlooked, because they often involve pace, surface, and the way people repeat the same walking routine without realizing what it is doing over time. The fourth mistake is always walking at the same pace, in the same way, without paying attention to what your body is telling you. This is one of those habits that sounds harmless, and that is exactly why people overlook it. Many adults over 50 find a pace that feels familiar, and they repeat it every day. Same route, same rhythm, same stride, same effort. They stop noticing whether the body is moving well. They only focus on finishing the walk. But I've seen this happen again and again. When a walking pattern becomes automatic, people often stop adjusting. They do not notice when the hips are getting tighter, when one leg is doing more work than the other, when fatigue is showing up too early, when balance feels a little less steady than it used to. Most people think consistency is always a good thing, but in practice, repeating a poor pattern every day can slowly build into a much bigger problem. The fifth mistake is ignoring the walking surface. This gets missed far too often. People pay attention to distance. They pay attention to time. Sometimes they pay attention to shoes, but they do not always pay attention to where they are walking. Hard pavement, uneven sidewalks, sloped driveways, loose gravel, wet ground, dark stairs. All of these can change how the body moves. After 50, the body may not recover from unstable footing the way it once did. The ankles may react more slowly. The hips may not correct as quickly. Balance may be more sensitive. And what looks like a small misstep can quietly create strain, or worse, lead to a fall. That is not something I would take lightly. I've seen strong, independent people lose confidence in walking not because of one dramatic injury, but because of repeated small moments where the body stopped feeling steady. And once confidence changes, movement changes too. People shorten their stride. They stiffen up. They become more guarded. And that guarded movement often creates even more tension in the body. The sixth mistake is walking through pain and calling it normal. This is one of the most dangerous mistakes in the whole video. Because once people decide that pain is just part of getting older, they stop listening to the body. They stop asking questions. They stop adjusting. They keep repeating the same stress. Now, I want to be careful here. Not every ache means something serious. Not every sore muscle is a warning sign. But persistent pain, repeated pain, or pain that changes the way you walk is not something I would casually dismiss. Pain that shows up every walk. Pain that makes you limp slightly. Pain that appears in the morning and returns by evening. Pain that spreads from the foot to the knee or from the hip to the back. Those are patterns, and patterns matter. Over the years, I've learned that the body usually whispers before it screams. The seventh mistake is relying on walking alone while ignoring strength, balance, and stability. This is one of the biggest misconceptions I see in adults over 50. They believe that because they walk every day, they are covering all the bases. But walking is not everything. Walking is useful. Walking is important. Walking can absolutely support health. But if the feet are weak, if the hips are stiff, if the core is not supporting you well, if balance is declining, then walking alone may not be enough to protect the body the way people hope it will. This is where many people make a serious mistake. They keep walking on top of weakness instead of addressing the weakness itself. And then one day they notice something has changed. They are slower getting up, less steady turning around, more careful on stairs, more hesitant on uneven ground. Not because the body failed overnight, because the warning signs were there all along. You do not need to panic, but you do need to pay attention. If walking leaves you with repeated pain, unusual fatigue, stiffness that keeps returning, or a growing sense of instability, do not brush that aside too quickly. If your posture is collapsing, if your steps feel heavy, if your shoes are worn down, if one side of your body feels different from the other, those are the kinds of signals I would take seriously. The body rarely starts with a crisis. More often it starts with a pattern. And the people who usually do best are not the ones who wait for the problem to become obvious. They are the ones who notice the small changes early. They adjust sooner. They ask better questions. They give the body a chance to recover before the strain becomes something bigger. So if you are over 50 and walking is part of your routine, that is a good place to start. But do not assume that walking automatically protects you if the pattern itself is working against you. Pay attention to how you walk. Pay attention to what you feel after. Pay attention to what has changed. Because many people assume discomfort during walking is just part of aging. I've seen too many cases to believe that too quickly. If this video helped you, subscribe for more guidance like this. And if you've noticed any of these signs yourself, or if you still have questions, share it in the comments.